All right, to my friends who are joining us via recording, we are working on page 4 and 5 of the lesson number 6 packet. The purpose of this exercise is to help us group together bone markings by what their words mean. So we're looking here at the femur, and we have the parts, the bone markings of the femur labeled. Let me emphasize this. We said this before, but I want to emphasize it again. Do not memorize these bone markings for the midterm exam. You will memorize them for the final exam, but do not memorize them for the midterm exam because we will not ask them on the midterm exam. The purpose of this exercise is to help us see that this word head, this bone marking that's called a head, if you notice when we're over here looking at our description of it, a head is a projection. It's something that sticks out. So when you're making a list of what kinds of bone markings fit into what groups, a head of a bone, and we've got those on all kinds of bones, the head of the humerus, the head of the femur, the head of the radius and the ulna. This word head always means something that sticks out. It's always a projection. When we talk about the greater trochanter, that's this little part right here. A trochanter is something that, if we look over at its description, means a bump. So we've got a bump called the greater trochanter. That trochanter part of its name means bump. Whether it's the greater one or the lesser one, always means that it's a bump. Notice here, smaller bump, larger bump. Trochanter means bump. We got some other words that mean bump too. If you go down to the bottom, notice we've got the middle bump and the middle above bump, if you will. The middle condyle, that's another bump word, and epicondyle. This epi part is like the epidermis that was above. So an epicondyle is always a bump that's above a condyle. So two bumps that I see here on the bottom part of my femur, epicondyles and condyles. We have this indentation right here that's called the intercondylar fossa. This word fossa is an indentation word. So when I talk about a fossa, that's an indentation. In particular, this one's called the intercondylar fossa, in between the condyles of the femur. The condyles are these bumps that I see right here. So in between those bumps, the condyles. We also see this one last marking here called the Intertrochanteric Crest. The crest word that we see in its name refers to a line or a projection that's in a line shape. It's intertrochanteric, meaning it's in between the trochanters. So emphasis right now, though, is the fact that a crest is a line. A crest is a line. Hey, let's work together on this one really fast. There are 5 bone markings that we need to label on the skull. Can you use that T up above my finger here? Can you use that to help me type in the names of these bone markings really fast? Yeah, so we know that one is a hole. I probably should have been more specific. Yeah, can we give the whole bone marking names? You guys are finding that my anatomy words. Here we go. Perfect. So there we go. Awesome. Okay. Look at us. Teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay. We have 5 bone markings on the skull. We have this one right here that's called the zygomatic process. Let me get a pointer back. Zygomatic process. That word process, if we look over here, is another word that means projection or something that sticks up. We've got this, oh, here we go. External acoustic meatus. Meatus is kind of a fun word here. The meatus word in its name means hole. Hey, it's external acoustic meatus. If you look at its description, it's the outside hearing hole. External acoustic meatus. That's this hole right here. So meatus means a hole. Hey, what else means a hole is this word foramen. A foramen is always, always a hole. So we're going to hear about things like the obturator foramen. We're going to hear about things like the optic foramen, the vertebral foramen. Every time you hear the word foramen, you're always looking for a hole. Every foramen is always a hole. Every angle, we'll see a couple of bones that have an angle on them. Every angle is always this bent edge on a bone. So an angle, like we see here, is the bent edge on a bone. Or we've got the styloid process. Again, this process word always means something that's a projection or something that sticks up. Here's how you use your labeling that we've done together. When you go to that last page in your lab packet on page 5, you've got a list that asks you to sort things. So we're looking for all the words that mean a hole, all the words that mean an edge, all the words that mean an indentation, or the last one that you have on your list are things that mean a projection or a bump or a line. When you look at the bold words that are in the easy person descriptions of what these things are, they're going to match up with these words at the top of the list. So everything that when you look at it on the picture, everything that you labeled that was a bump goes on this list. So some of the things that we labeled as a bump, I'll put a couple in here for us. One of the things we labeled as a bump was an epicondyle. Or another thing that we labeled as a bump was a condyle. When we talked about projections, we had a couple of projections on the skull. What was the word that meant projection? Can we guess? Okay, the head's another one that goes on there. Yep, head goes on there. Yeah, the one that I was looking for with the skull was the process. Yep. So process, head, condyle, epicondyle. Let's see what we've crossed off so far. Condyle, epicondyle, head, process. Yep, we need to add trochanter to here too. Yep. Okay, so we've sorted out our words here. Again, the way that we figured out which of these words went on this list was by looking at their bold part in their description. Anything that the word said it was a projection, anything that the word said it was a bump, anything that the word said it was a line, all of those are going on this list right here. So all of these kinds of bone markings, here, let me give you a big picture. Look here. The reason you're memorizing this list of words is because when I start having you learn about the lateral epicondyle or the medial epicondyle of the tibia, for example, we need to know what we're looking for. We need to know that it's something that sticks up. Let's go back to our other list. We need to know that we're looking at a hole when we see things like the word fissure or things like the word sinus. The big one we're going to see a whole lot of is foramen. Anytime I see foramen, I'm thinking a hole. Hey, there was one other one that was our outside hearing hole. What was the word? Yep, that other one, that weird one, Meatus. There's my holes. What was the word that we used to describe an indentation? It was the intercondylar fossa. Yep, the intercondylar fossa. And what was the word we used to say a bent edge? What was that one called? It was on the mandible, on the jawbone. Yep, the angle. Okay, for the time being, what you're doing with these lists is you're memorizing them. For the time being, that's what we're doing. We're memorizing that these 4 words all mean that we're looking for a hole in a bone or on a bone. We're memorizing that these 4 words all mean it's an indentation in a bone. We're memorizing that these 3 words are found on the edge of a bone. And then my last list of 11 words are all things that stick up. Right now, we're just learning big picture, what do these words mean? Because for the final exam, we're going to know specific examples of all of them. What questions do we have about this activity right now? This is a mind blown emoji, right? Jacqueline asked the best way or the quickest way to learn it. Oh. I don't necessarily, yeah, I mean, this might be a good thing for flashcards. What you could do so what I might recommend for flashcards is, I would say on the front, put the word border, and on the back, put the word on the edge. And then on the front, put the word margin. On a back, put on the edge. I don't think a helpful flashcard is going to be name all the words that mean an edge. I don't think that's going to be a helpful one. I think what's going to be a more helpful one is to go through and put each of these words by themselves, and on the back side of the card, say if it's an edge, or say if it's a hole, or say if it's an indentation. What could help you too, the way that we got to these things here was by using actual examples. So what you could do, and we kind of started doing this in our labeling, is we just put the descriptor word next to it. If you're a visual person, consider doing it kind of like this. So see how I'm just putting the word that was from the list by all of these things? If you like to study visually, you can go through and print just a picture of the skull and memorize that, hey, this is a process and this is a process. These are things that stick out. There's some kind of projection. This is a hole. I know the specific name of this hole is a meatus. Or here's another hole. This hole is a foramen. So if you're a visual person, the other way you could work on it too is doing a Google search for foramen and seeing what a whole bunch of different foramina, they're called, or a whole bunch of different holes look like. Do a Google search for process, or do a Google search for, we go back here, condyle, these bumps. So if you're a visual person, just look at as many examples as possible. So when you see the word condyle, it's triggering in your mind pictures of these bumps that we see on the femur, or on the humerus, or on the tibia. So for my visual friends, Google Images. As always, Google Images might be a good option for you. Again, it's not fast, which I know sucks, right? There's not a fast way to do it, but the more you can see it, the more you can practice it and flashcard it, probably the better off you are. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. Any other questions at this point?
Dallas.
Yes.
I have a quick question. It may not have nothing to do with, but you know the little hole that some people are born with on top of their ear?
I'm not familiar with
I
that. On top
can't
of the
think of
ear,
the
on
name
top of
of
the
it.
head.
It's like right, like at the very top of the ear, like toward the inside of the ear. Not everybody is born with it, but some are. Would that be, I wanted to know if, would that be the same thing as a foramen?
It could be. Yeah,
Let me
I
see
am
if I
not
can Google
totally
it right
familiar
quick.
with it, but yeah, if it's a hole, it could either be a foramen or we might call it a meatus. Now you've got me interested, so I might have to do a Google search and see if I can find the name of this mysterious hole. But yeah, I'll look into that for you. That's the right
Okay.
kind, though, of thinking that we're wanting you to do. Could it be called a foramen? Absolutely, it could be. Could it be called a meatus? Certainly it could, because that's what these words mean. They always mean a hole. So that's a great
Yes,
correlation to make. But you've stumped the teacher. I don't know this particular hole, so I'll have to do a little digging. Good question. I will look into it and see what I can find out.
They said it's called a preauricular pit.
Okay. Yeah.
Not
So
everybody's born.
yeah. So hey, there's a regional term in there too. So you said pre-auricular pit, I think is what you said.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's our regional term right there, right? The auricular region was the ear. So pre-auricular in
Yeah.
front of the ear. Yeah, so that's interesting. We could probably, though, if it isn't a true hole, we could also potentially call it a foramen or a meatus. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
So sulcus, let's go back to our list here. Sulcus is something that's on the indentation list. Yeah, we do have it there. We didn't ask you to label any sulci. That's their plural word. But we will see some things that are a sulcus later in the semester, and that means it's an indentation. Yeah, Nicole, you've got a question.
Yeah, on the list for projection, it says kind of projection or bump or line. Do we have to know that it's a bump, line, or projection, or just that it's under projection?
Just know generally that it means it's something that sticks out. So we described the things that sticked out. I'm done. We're done here. The things that stick out. There were different ways that we described them. Some of them are a bump looking thing that sticks out. Some of the things are more of a line that sticks out, but all of them fall into this category. Basically, we could change this to things that stick out. Things that are not a hole, things that are not an indentation, things that are not an edge. That's what goes on this list here. So maybe that's a better category for yourself to memorize it as things that stick out. You don't have to memorize it as a bump or a line or a projected. Just know it's something that sticks out. Any other last minute questions? Yep, Monica.
Sorry, you've probably answered this, but for the lab exam, will there be like visible body where we click on the part of the body?
There will not be the kind of, so they're called dissection quizzes, basically, where you have to go through and take stuff off, right? We won't have any of those on this exam. But it would be a good, visible body is a good tool for reviewing, especially identifying your bones. But I'm not going to go through and ask you to dissect a way to find something on this exam here. Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. All right, well, I'm probably going to call it good for today. But what I would love for you guys to do, especially as you're wrapping up this lesson and as we're working through the review assignment, please start making a list of the topics or specific questions that you guys have related to lab material. Because again, my plug for you is that Monday morning at 9:30. So here, let's get a whiteboard and I'll type it up to make sure we get all the important details there. So Monday, October 5, 9:30 a.m., bright and early, we'll be here together. This is going to be our lab midterm exam review. I am not going to plan any particular activities for us to do. It's going to be completely guided by you guys. I would love, though, come maybe Saturday, Sunday timeframe, if you want to send me an email that lists a few of the topics that you're most interested in us talking about, that would be helpful for me to know what to prepare. So for Monday's session, we're going to get together at 9:30 in the morning, and we're going to review for that midterm. Please send me questions that you think of, and I will do my best to prepare to address those questions with you guys. I kept you entirely too long today, so I'm going to stop bugging you for today. Tomorrow morning, remember, we're going to wrap up lesson number 6 from lecture. So plan to come back for lecture review tomorrow, and plan to come back Monday for lab stuff. So I'm going to turn off that recording, stick around for a bit, and then I will see you guys tomorrow.